Welcome to the Power of Design podcast, where we have inspiring conversations that explore the intersection of architecture, construction, and real estate, so we can understand the dynamics and trends that shape an exciting and powerful built environment. This is your host, Jack Osa. Today, in the Power of Design podcast, I'll be talking to Adam Williams. Adam is a partner at Legacy Real Estate Advisors in Charlotte, North Carolina. He is an expert at helping brands create, grow, design, and develop successful destination projects, such as restaurants and retail stores. I had a great time with Adam. I learned about his career and ability to deliver a huge amount of value by focusing on his passion and injecting fun in everything he does. We talk about what makes the perfect restaurant experience and the current state of retail real estate. This is my conversation with Adam Williams. Adam, welcome to the Power of Design podcast. How are you today?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Adam, you are an expert on retail and restaurant commercial real estate services. You even have your own podcast called Retail Redevelop, which we'll talk about later. Where does your passion for this type of work comes from?
You know, I'd love to say that I was born with this burning passion for retail and restaurants and all the things that come along with it, but it's not really the case. My close friends and family would tell you that I didn't eat anything but like pizza, hamburgers, and spaghetti till I was a grown-ass man. My wife would make fun of me that I'd never drank a glass of red wine or ate a real salad until after she met me and she tried to make me into an actual adult. So I was not one of those guys that like went on a trip to Florence when I was a child, like Danny Meyer, and knew that I was going to be called to this business. It's absolutely not what happened. I got into commercial real estate because I was working in residential real estate for the big builders right out of college. Didn't know what I wanted to do really, but I loved people. I loved interacting. I've always been able to sell. Like I've always just been able to listen and kind of know what people need. Got into commercial real estate just in time for a huge downturn. Back in 2000, I guess I got in it in probably 2004, 2005, something like that. Was able to just build a book of business in time for everything to completely collapse. So that was perfect timing. So when that happened, I looked around and the only thing that was still churning were restaurant spaces, because in the restaurant world, everybody thinks when you walk into a restaurant and you look up and there's this beautiful chandelier and this beautiful wall treatment and this beautiful flatware that you're eating with or something like that, that's where the money is spent. That's a misnomer. All the money is spent what we call the back of house. The back of house is hood systems, fire ansel systems, HVAC, massive electrical needs, massive grease trap and grease laden vapor
things
systems,
that you don't see,
things that the customer never sees and could not care less about. That's where a lot of the money is spent. Huge amounts of money. The per square foot cost of a restaurant kitchen, it's like building a freaking battleship, man. Every inch matters and it's really expensive. So those things were still moving. So I had a partner who's still a business partner of mine today, Dave Sherhart, who came out of the restaurant business, like the actual owning, managing, running restaurants. So he knew that side of the business. I had some contacts with a restaurant group out in the Midwest. He had a really good contact with a restaurant group in Atlanta. And so I was like, hey, I'll teach you how to sell. You teach me, a little bit about restaurants.
Right.
And, let's see if we can make this happen. So we did one restaurant. It turned into 2 restaurants, turned into 5 restaurants. And we slowly became known as kind of the restaurant group in town. And that led to a friend of mine, Lexi Longstreet, who owns a really, really sophisticated residential real estate company in town called Savvy & Company. Very technically savvy person. And she said, Adam, you should start a blog, right? And this was before eater.com. This is before yelp.com. This is before all that stuff. I was like, I have no idea how to start a blog. Right. This was WordPress had just come out, I believe. I don't remember what year this would have been, 2009, 2010, something. And so I poured a glass of red wine because my wife had cultured me by this point. Yeah. Sat down, cross-legged, crisscross applesauce, as my Montessori teachers tell me to say it, and watched Monday Night Football and did a blog post. That became restauranttraffic.com, which became kind of the leading Charlotte-based restaurant news source. And so it just organically built upon itself. And, but what's kept me doing it is the people.
Yeah.
Like meeting the retail restaurateur people. They're just like my kind of people. Like I sit through, I'm sure a lot of people watching this, like we were talking about Joe Franco before we were here. I work with all the major office people in town, like all the guys from CB, Cushman, Trinity, Spectrum, you name it, all the major players. And I have to sit through office meetings a lot, right? Because I'm kind of the tail wagging the dog, because my main business is, if you're an institutional group that owns, for instance, Crescent and Barings that own Montford Park, which is right across the street from us, they're making a tremendous amount of their money on the apartments or on the office buildings, the lion's share of the project, the 95% of the project. It's my job to come in and try to figure out how to make the ground floor cool, inviting, amenitize the space. So I sit through a lot of office kind of whiteboarding and things like this, as you do all the time.
Sure.
And for me, that part is not as exciting, not as fulfilling as really figuring out how to make people excited about the front door. And so that's been what's really kept me in the business. I just find it utterly fascinating.
Yeah, it's like the fun part. But when you look at when we build spaces, when build buildings, projects, you always have the buckets of, live, play, work, and learn. Those are like the four things we all humans kind of go to do what we need to do. And the fun one is play. And I think play is where, retail, restaurant, shopping, that leisure part of our life comes to play, because, the other ones are very serious. And it is very fun to just help people have fun on those spaces. That's always really nice. That involves, retail kind of projects. Tell me about yourself. How do you get, inspired just to go ahead and start a blog and do it? Because a lot of people want to do that, but they may write one or two posts and then they stop. Where do you get that drive, or what motivates you to explore different things, start the blog, get into an industry you didn't know, keep going, push through it, learning? Well, where does that come from?
Well, as they say, it's a cliche, but necessity is the mother of invention, right? I mean, when you look back to 2009, I wasn't exactly, huge money in the bank, been crushing it for 10 years. I mean, I was a kid starting out in real estate, and I joined a very small boutique firm called Legacy Real Estate Advisors. I was there the day the firm license showed up. I've since kind of, bought in as a partner, and that's all history at this point. But there wasn't a playbook, right? I didn't have this kind of squadron of people saying, you will be this, you will do this, this is how you succeed. It was a kind of a loose band of people that were all there to do deals, right? We weren't there to build, CB Richard Ellis or Cushman & Wakefield. It wasn't, that's not what it was. It was a platform to do deals. So I had to figure it out. I tell anybody, I have young people that are getting into the business, reach out to me often saying, hey, help me out. Like, what should I do? Like, what did you do? Honestly, I just kind of beat my head against a wall enough times until you figure out what to do. I think I do love the marketing side, as you do. We've talked about this a lot. I think that there is a lot of kind of intrinsic value that you might not see day one, but I look at it like kind of building a foundation of a house, right? And I think that just putting in the work to build that foundation of the house is really important. And I think that, to your point, a lot of people talk about doing it. A lot of people do it once. It's a way to differentiate yourself that I think adds a lot of credence to what you do, because you have to be passionate about what you're doing in order to put in the work. Because I tell everybody, you want to start a podcast, you want to start a blog, it's like a bill collector, man.
Yeah.
Content every day, every week, every month, your content's due. And if you don't pay the bill collector, everything you've done is gone. So it does take a lot of work. I'm lucky enough to have Kimberly Noble on my staff that handles a lot of the back end stuff for the podcast specifically, and a lot of the marketing stuff. It's a job in and of itself, and you do need to be freed up to actually do your day job, your 9 to 5, and it's very helpful to segment the marketing side and let somebody that's really passionate about it kind of take that and that ball and run with it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think, one thing is, putting in the work is so important, and it's a concept that makes sense, but a lot of people don't see it. Might be because we're so used to instant gratification because of technology or many other factors that we want to get the price right away. We don't want to pay for it. And I call it, if you pay the price for things, and it's going to be time and work, you'll get the result. You'll see it, but you have to pay it. Like, it needs to cost you something. It's not gonna be free. And while you're paying the price, you don't know when you're gonna get that result. You just show up every day and work and do your best and do it again and do it again. And that's where the compound effect, you'll see it years later. There are many things that I feel today that I'm like, oh wow, I have, or I feel in a certain way that I wanted to have before. And I achieved it, but it was very gradual, very slow. The work cannot took you there very slowly.
Yeah, it's helpful sometimes, and I'm guilty of being lazy in this aspect. I'm a very long-term thinker, but I try to write down kind of big goals for the maybe it's the month, maybe it's the quarter, maybe it's the year. And just know that when I'm putting in this work, it's not because I need, to pay my mortgage this month. It's because I'm trying to work towards this big goal that's going to take some time. So I try to keep a macro perspective, kind of know what direction I'm going in, and then put in the kind of the grunt work that you have to do to keep it going.
Nice. Walk me through a typical transaction when a client approach you from the first conversation all the way through success. How does that work?
Well, it really depends on the type of assignment. I do a tremendous amount of landlord representation. I also historically have done a ton of tenant representation. So it's kind of two sides of a coin. On the landlord side, I generally like to be involved very early, which can be a challenge because I'm the last person to get paid on a deal, right? I'm not like an attorney getting paid, $400 or $500 an hour for all the grunt work that goes into it, but at the same time, you get a much better product. So I'm lucky enough that people reach out to me a lot now because I have a very focused niche that I operate in. So on the landlord side, I like to be in kind of at the same time that you would be involved, right? I like to be in on the planning. I like to make sure that MEP is a huge part of what I do, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. And if you want to talk about a good way to cost yourself a tremendous amount of money, is you screw up the MEP on a retail restaurant portion of a mixed use building. That could be an apartment building. That could be an office building. If you mess up the MEP on the front end, you're going to be chasing it forever. So I like to be involved on the front end. I like to meet with an institutional group, have them say, hey, we have this project. Either we're going to build something ground up, or maybe they're gonna renovate an existing project and want to kind of bring it into the 21st century. I want to be there with literally a whiteboard. Say, all right, what do you want? What do you see? Who is your avatar upstairs, right? Like, are you going after a company that's going to be based with millennials? Or are you going after a very established law firm? I mean, we got to figure out who your avatar is in your building before we can really plan for the front door. Fortunately, unfortunately, these deals take a long time. So I get in with a group and generally become pretty personally close with the group over the course of a year or two, because it does take a while. And then, it's not over. It's really never over, but it's not over until the grand opening party. I heard somebody say, I can't remember, but they're in the grand opening business, right? That's really the goal, is to show up and see where all the blood, sweat, tears, and capital goes.
So how will you describe the ideal restaurant experience, and how critical is the food to that component?
Well, the food is only part of it, right? Like we've all been into a restaurant, and a lot of these are your chef-driven restaurants, right? God knows how to make the best stromboli you've ever had in your life, right? Or whatever. And you go in, you're not greeted at the door. The service isn't great. They hand you your cup of water like this. I hang around with a lot of very sophisticated retail and restaurant operators, and my wife would tell you, drives her crazy, or my friends too, to go to a restaurant with me, because they're sitting there trying to have a good time, and I'm
looking at
side eyeing the restaurant because there's things that are happening there that just aren't right. So there's a steps of service procedure that is, now the food, obviously you're not going to go to a restaurant if the food sucks, right? But that's like, signing your name on the SATs. If I can make it at home, I ain't going and paying you 2x in a restaurant, right? Like the food has to be good.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it has to be fancy. Like it can be a killer ham and cheese sandwich if it's done with passion. But it's really a steps of service procedure. Are you greeted within X number of time walking in the door? Is there a connection between the front of the house, which is your hostess and your service team, and the back of the house, right? Are those guys communicating in the right way? What's the selection, right? I mean, I could sit here and bore you to tears with all the things that I like that go into a good experience for me. But there's, since I know this is kind of a local audience, I mean, there's people in town that do it at a very, very high level. Like, John Dressler, for example, Paul Manley, Bruce Moffett. I mean, there's some groups in town, kind of local grown operators that a lot of them come out of, like Houston's, for example, Cheesecake Factory, places where you're taught the right way to run a restaurant from the ground up.
Yeah.
Right. And those typically translate into really good restaurateurs. I'm not saying that I want to go eat at Cheesecake Factory every day, but there's a reason why they do, 10 million plus a unit, which is huge numbers. They're doing $1,000 a foot plus, and out of those places, it's because they run a tight freaking ship.
Oh yeah.
So somebody with corporate backing that knows how to put a personal touch on it is usually a good formula.
Yeah, and I think that brings the conversation to the brand of the restaurant, because there are many places where you can eat something very similar, but if the brand it's well developed, they can charge you 10 times for that same amount of food or type of food, and you'll pay it just because how you feel when you're in there. And that's one of the things that I love to learn and explore always about brands, and is how brands drive our behavior and things that we care about, like spending our money. And sometimes like luxury brands, could be for anything, clothing or cars or anything. There are some things that we look at a brand, or we see a brand that we like, and we even say, oh, I love this brand, or I love this. Like, it's like a very strong feeling toward it. And then if it costs more, oh, I don't care, I'll pay for it. And there are many restaurants where you feel like that you're gonna pay more, but you're like, I mean, how I feel when I'm there, I'm paying for that. And that goes to, we pay for experiences. We buy experiences. We buy how things make us feel. And visiting a restaurant, that's like the full immersive experience, because you're looking at things, all your senses are in there. And now even the food is even more, because it's just going to elevate that experience.
I'd say that there's a very, very compelling reason why a group like Restoration Hardware is spending millions and millions of dollars putting high-end restaurants in their establishments. If you haven't been to a new RH, it's a heck of an experience. Now, am I jumping up and down to spend $15,000 on a couch? Maybe not, but there's a reason, to your point, that they are adding that experiential restaurant feel to their offerings, because it is an inspirational and an aspirational experience. And I think that, live beautifully is kind of a cliche, but it matters to people that are willing to go out and spend money on a nice bottle of wine and a really well prepared meal that has the right experience behind it. And I think that carries over to the brand in a big way. You've got some really, really talented branding people in Charlotte that I think their work would translate into other markets that are taking that very, very seriously. And you can see that. I love it. It's a kind of another leg of the stool for me. I love being excited about a restaurant the first time that I see a picture of it on Instagram, or first time I see, their tagline, or even their colors, their logo. I mean, I think that, the same passion that goes into a logo design and a menu design is going to carry over into other parts of the restaurant. So, but I'm a nerd. Like, I get super excited about all that stuff. So I'm a little bit of an outlier, but I think it all matters.
Yeah. And I think what's cool about it is that when you look at current design trends in workplace or hospitality, they're bringing that retail lifestyle environment to this previously rigid designs, like offices. They're becoming more like, lounge seating. There's more food. There's more pantry. It's kind of bringing that play portion of life and bringing it into work, or even to learn, when we're talking about educational buildings. And it's because people are realizing, you don't really have to separate your life like that. It's life integration. You're the same person when you're working, or when you went to a school, or, when you're at home. So it's how do you mix and match of those things? And I think there is a huge potential with your expertise and your knowledge of that environment to bring that to, office space, educational buildings, and other type of projects that they really need that. Because now you see it when they could bring some couches, or maybe there is a high top table, and now there is coffee here. And in co-working spaces like these ones, you see that a lot. But I think that's kind of like the next level that is gonna impact the way we use all those spaces.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it starts even well before you get to the 8th floor of an office building. Since we're talking about office, if you go through Uptown Charlotte, for an example, every building in Uptown Charlotte was built as a monument to itself, or a monument to the person that created it. You walk through all the Wells Fargo buildings, formerly obviously built as Wachovia buildings, Bank of America buildings. They have these grandiose marble lobbies and frescoes and these huge kind of homages to the way things used to be, right? I mean, it's like, look at how prestigious we are, right? Like we can build these marble facades, and they're beautiful, and they're just tons of wasted space. And that's not the way things are done anymore. So I think that you need to rethink the design. I'm not saying tear these buildings down, because they're, $200 million assets and up. Geez. But that's not what impresses people anymore. people want to come in and feel like they belong. Like people don't want to come in and feel like they're intimidated and, oh my goodness, that marble wall cost 50 grand. Like nobody cares about that. They want to go in and associate themselves with their surroundings. I mean, I think you're seeing that play out in retail in a big way. And millennials, I think, are driving this because I don't think a millennial cares. Now, obviously there's exceptions, but just a middle of the road millennial that doesn't have some Wall Street investment banking job, they're not impressed with a Rolex, right? Like maybe somebody coming out that I'm about to turn 40. Somebody, Rolex was like a status symbol, BMW or, something like that was a status symbol. I think that the younger people want to identify with their surroundings, with the brands that they choose to wear. I think that, hyper transparency in manufacturing is absolutely changing the way that younger people shop because they want to identify with the brand, right? They don't, those experiences and that kind of honesty is very important. So when they walk into a building and they see this huge marble facade and this massive space with like one chair sitting over in the corner because you're just supposed to sit around in awe of the place as you go to the elevator, they don't care about that. They want to go in and be comfortable and say, hey, meet me at the Coco and the Director building, right? Because, it's this warm, inviting coffee shop where you could see, an absolute banking stud in one booth, and you could see, a graphic designer with, a face tattoo or something sitting in the next booth, right? Like that I think is considered a lot cooler than like who can spend the most money on artwork in their bank building.
We'll be right back with more from the Power of Design podcast.
The Power of Design podcast is brought to you by OSA Studio, a multidisciplinary design firm focused on creating impactful experiences through the power of design. We partner with our clients to create buildings, interior spaces, brands, and strategies that help you deliver a successful project. As a minority-owned firm, we are committed to building a diverse platform of curious and driven design professionals so we can together pursue our full potential. For more information, please visit us at www.osastudio.com.
Yeah, and I think that goes to when you start defining like what is architecture. And I have a very, particular definition. Typically we relate architecture with buildings, right? With construction, with, hard elements that define space. But to me, architecture is really not even the empty space, but the human perception of that space. That is architecture, a human experience in space. And as designers, what we are designing is the experience of that human mind in that space. And the elements we have to define that experience are the walls, the ceilings, the colors, the materials, and then we can start thinking about what we want them to feel or to do or to experience when they're in there. And I like to see architecture as we're modeling this empty space. Imagine it's filled and you're just carving out spaces for this person, and you wanted to do this, and you wanted to experience light certain ways, and you wanted to experience textures because it feels that way, and then you generate that experience. And I think the buildings you're referring to that were designed many years ago, they were thinking about how do I design this object that is a building and people go to it, but I'm focusing on the object, not on the person experiencing the object.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I would love to, I know you're supposed to be asking me the questions. It's your podcast.
No, go ahead, man.
I would love to hear your perspective on, what do you think the next thing is? I mean, we're going through a massive kind of almost generation defining moment. And I think that's going to carry everywhere, carry down from migration patterns of where people want to live, where people want to work, where people want to through everything, right? This is kind of a sea change. And I would love to hear how you think that's going to be defined in architecture. Obviously, people want a little bit more space around them right now. I can see kind of, especially in the Southeast where we have tremendous weather a good portion of the year, outdoor elements, bringing the outside in even more, bringing the inside out even more. I'd love to hear your perspective on a couple quick things that you could see changing.
Well, I think one for sure that we're already seeing, but I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg, is just the real integration of technology into our lives. I don't think it's crazy to believe that pretty soon most people are going to experience life through virtual reality. If you have a device that lets you experience things as they are, out there, and you can integrate other senses where you can smell or taste or feel things, with your hands, that they feel like the real thing. Why do they have that reason to go out there and experience that in the real world if they already have it? And even, people, relationships, there are many, there are a lot of social media influencers that they're not a person. They're manufactured persons, right? So they could be, three-dimensional avatars, and they have a name and they have followers and they pull people and they say things and they're influencing people. It's amazing. So I think the integration of technology is going to be huge. And I think the way we're going to see that, and I might be thinking, I don't know, 25 or 50 years down the road, but the need to use space is going to probably decrease, because you might live in a pod where you just get all the experiences. You can do your work. You can, you may need some just green spaces to go out there and recharge.
You've seen The Matrix too many times, I think.
Yeah.
We're getting very science fiction right now. I'm sitting in a pod, like getting some intravenous vitamins.
You know that
somebody turns me every once in a while so I don't get bed sores.
Yeah. The Matrix is a documentary. It's not a movie.
Yeah, it's a documentary. We're living. I do listen to a tremendous amount of very interesting podcast people that are outside of just the retail realm, and there's a lot of people out there that think we're living in a simulation. And it's just be careful.
Yeah.
Be careful, world. Like, if you go down that black hole of starting to listen to some of this stuff, because these people are much smarter than I am, right? They're looking at issues that I'm trying to fill buildings and find cool restaurateurs. These people are trying to figure out our human source code. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that I really like to go out and be active and mountain bike and ski and drive fast cars and stuff like that. So I guess I can do all that virtually. But we'll see. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens this next year, where everything that we're used to going and doing, we're going to be doing from home. I could definitely see, we're getting way off topic here, but hell, it's your podcast. We can do whatever we want, right? I can see virtual reality becoming huge because we can't go to the NFL games, right? We can't do all that stuff. And yeah, it's fun watching it at home, but it's not nearly as immersive as being at Bank of America Stadium or pick an event. For me, I love live music. Love live music. That's one of my favorite things to do. And concerts, like, when is the next time I'm going to see my favorite band? It's crazy. And that's a hard thing. That fellowship that you get in person, for whatever you're into, sports, music, anything, even going to restaurants. It is a hard thing to translate into VR, but I guess we're still in the infancy of it.
Yeah. Let's talk about what's going on with the COVID-19 situation, because I think your industry is the one that got hit harder.
Yeah, we got
hit on
pretty
the
good.
First one. What would you say is the biggest challenge that
uncertainty
people are facing?
It's uncertainty right now. Literally, as we were hitting play on this podcast, I read that Governor Cooper has said restaurants can reopen on Friday at 50% occupancy. It's already happening in South Carolina. It's already happening in Georgia, Florida. from people that I've talked to down there, people are coming out. Like, obviously, if you're compromised, if you're older, stay the hell at home, right? Absolutely. But I think people are kind of sick and tired of being sick and tired and want to get back out. That said, we're living in an extremely, this is the mother of all unknowns, right? I mean, we're talking about people's health. And so the challenge is uncertainty. The challenge is, obviously, people have to spend a lot of money to get one of these restaurants or retail places up and running. And it's just, I mean, it's so uncertain. I mean, 50% occupancy, does that mean you're paying 50% rent? I mean, there's just so many uncertainties.
Yeah, you get that change. Like, if you don't pay the rent, then if you own the space, you're not getting the money. Then what are you not paying up that change?
Yeah. And that flows uphill. I mean, everybody, I've done interviews with the Business Journal and the Observer and the Agenda and all these places. And everybody wants to, their heart bleeds for these restaurateurs, as mine does. I mean, these are friends of mine. These are people that I care about. And they're having a horrible time, but when they're not paying their rent, everybody thinks of landlords as these, lighting cigars with $100 bill fat cats. It's not. I mean, some are, sure. Yeah. You've got the people that have made tremendous amounts of money being landlords, but you also just have normal people out there that are investing their 401ks in a little strip center somewhere or a Wendy's, whatever that is. And that flows uphill to the landlords, to the debt providers, to the equity providers. I don't know where it stops. We could really get into a kind of a rabbit hole of how to this could infect a lot of people, and it could even infect municipalities, because you think about what, again, I know this is a Charlotte-based podcast. You think about what South Park Mall is worth. I mean, how do you value? I mean, it's probably, what is it worth? $500 million more? I mean, it's worth an insane amount of money. What does the tax record say? What is the property tax bill that Simon has to pay the city of Charlotte and county of Mecklenburg every year based on that? And then, wait a minute, everybody's doing half the sales. Their rent, in theory, could go down, which devalues the asset. I mean, if you want to really sit and get granular about this thing, it could get very weird. Oh, by the way, 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 people in the country is employed in retail somehow. I mean, we're talking about big issues. And do I think that retail as we know it is done? No. Like, retail is more than just buying shit. It's more. We're social creatures. And that's not going to change. But for the next 6 months, we got more questions than answers. So,
sure.
That was probably a longer answer than you wanted, but that's
no. That's good, because I think the uncertainty is the thing that, we're all dealing with. And it's interesting because uncertainty is something that it's always there. And when we feel certain about something, it's usually fake certainty. Like, nothing is certain. I mean, anything could happen tomorrow.
This is just like uncertainly personified or magnified.
It's like uncertainty, but it's certain that it's uncertain.
We're all quite certain that we have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. And I think the people that are gonna thrive through this time is the ones that are comfortable with uncertainty. That it's okay. Just keep going and do my best every day. And
luckily, retailers, I always say that retail restaurant people are like riverboat gamblers, because, and Dave, one of my partners, has said this before. I'm sure he didn't make it up, but there's a million reasons not to do a deal, right? There's a million reasons not to open a restaurant, not to open a retail shop, not to redevelop an asset. There's only one reason to do it, right? It's because you think you can win. You think you're smarter than the last guy that tried it. And so there is an aspect of riverboat gamblers to all the best operators that I know. So I'm betting on them taking those bets. Yeah. And they will. I think that as soon as there's a light at the end of the tunnel, as soon as the deals get too good to pass up, you're gonna see some people, kind of rolling those dice again.
Sure.
So I like that portion of the segment and of the people that are involved.
Cool. How long have you been podcasting?
That's a great question. I think we're up to, call it 70 some odd episodes.
Yeah.
Started more sporadically and have since dialed it into once a week. And we've been doing that for a while. A couple of years. It's definitely been, a couple of years, but we've gotten a lot better. The first ones, the first ones were, it's like me and my buddies talking,
drunk.
Not drunk. I do need to do a drunk podcast.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. Like that.
I absolutely would love to do a drunk podcast, but haven't done that yet. But yeah, it's been a couple of years and it's been a lot of fun. I almost feel like I'm cheating in my industry because most of the people I talk to are extremely intelligent. I mean, every other week it's Harvard MBA, McKinsey consultant, like head of retail for McKinsey, like all these C-level guys that are super smart, bleeding edge. And it's like I have a freaking crystal ball, right? It's like I'm talking to these people and they're just sharing all their knowledge with me every week. So it's been a heck of a lot of fun. Not every single one of them is the best conversation I've ever had, right? You don't know any of these people. Sometimes you have an episode that you're like, probably need to edit that one down a little bit, right? See that 30 minutes into 20 minutes. But most of the time, I mean, these people are so willing to share their ideas because it's rare, right? Like think about 99% of the people that I meet, like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, I do retail commercial real estate. And I'm like, all right, whatever. So when you have somebody that's like, hey, I know who you are. I've researched you. I think you're cool enough for me to take an hour out of my day to sit down and talk to you. And I want you to just tell me what you know and what you do and why you're passionate about it. People are like, my wife won't even listen to me talk about that. Or my husband won't even listen to me talk about that. Like, cool. All right. People are genuinely excited most of the time. Now, don't get me wrong. I've had people that be like, nah, your subscribership isn't enough for me to take time. I've had people just kind of be, not as excited, but generally people are like, yeah, that's a great, I'd love to do it I can do it next Thursday.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of fun.
What do you think is the single most important lesson you have learned doing the podcast?
I think the biggest lesson that I've learned, just because I've heard it over and over and over and over, is that we are still in the infancy of what you would call retail 3.0 or retail 4.0, whatever you want to call it. So I mean, retail started as like your five and dime or your trading post, right? Where you went and got some new nails, whatever. and so if that was 1.0, then you had like Sears, you had the mall, which would be kind of, I guess you could consider that 2.0. And that became more than a place you went and bought shit, right? It was a community place. Like when I was growing up, shout out to Eastland Mall. If anybody's listening that's from Charlotte, it's the Eastland Mall shout out. I wear my Eastland Mall shirt around every once in a while. And then some people once like a week or once every 5 times I wear it, people get excited. I didn't go to Eastland Mall to buy stuff, right? Like I went because they had an ice skating rink and they had an arcade and they had, you saw people you knew there. And it was just like a thing that it was a community gathering place. Now that's obviously changed because there's a million things to do now that didn't exist when you were a kid. So I think that just learning how early we are in that next iteration, right? Like I am not a person that thinks that 90% of everything you buy is going to be on Amazon in 2 years. I just don't think that. I think that retail, now some stuff like the next thing, the cheapest thing, the commodity that you need. Oh yeah. That if you're in that business, you should polish up your resume, but there are certain things that you want to be able to experience. And I think that you touched on VR earlier. I think that people are going to start getting so creative on how that experience affects you in the retail realm that we're still in its infancy, but it's going to be really, really fun to watch. Like there's a woman named Ronnie Max that if you're a nerd like me, you should check out. I did a podcast with her a few months ago. And when I was in Manhattan last time, she did a map, like a Google map layer that you could follow all the coolest experiential retail places in Manhattan. And so I took half a day and I just went and did it. And when you see how seriously smart, forward-thinking brands are taking that, you start to understand what's kind of around the corner. And I think that, a lot of times you're going to be able to do something VR that maybe won't get you into a store, but that's okay because it's all one seamless experience. I think omni-channel is an overused word because, or maybe it's just an outdated word. Like frictionless is I can't remember who taught me that word, but that's kind of the next thing, right? It doesn't matter if you're buying something on your smartphone or in a brick and mortar restaurant. It's all one big experience. And the brands that know how to your point, make that kind of an aspirational and inspirational event more than just buying this shirt, right? Like I know the guy that made this shirt, and it's a badass experience when you go into one of their places. Same as these pants. Like I could wear any kind of jeans or pants on the planet, but I've seen this guy make a pair of pants like this. Like I identify with that. And I think that the brands that understand how to harness that are going to be the future.
I'm going to ask you my last question, which is, how does the power of design impact who you are and what you do?
Well, I'm a specific case because I love design. I love it in the car that I drive, the clothes that I wear, the brands that I identify with. Like I love design. So for me, it's more than just a cliche, right? Like I love the artisan kind of craftsmanship and the passion that goes into the design. And while that doesn't necessarily mean a Rolex, right? It doesn't necessarily mean a Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe watch or something like that. I think that people that are passionate about what they do, it manifests itself in design. And for me, I like to support people that are passionate about what they do.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Adam.
This is awesome. Thanks, everybody. A lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Design podcast. Remember to rate and review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Find out more about Jack and Oz Studio at ozstudio.com and follow us on Instagram at the Power of Design podcast. Thank you.